What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another highly combustible reaction. We are jumping into something awesome. About to get an education today. Shout out to Brian for the request. He said, "Hey, highly wanted to share this extremely educational video about bizarre classical piano works." We like bizarre. We do. I like bizarre artists. I like bizarre a lot of things. There are a few composers Megan mentions in this video whose names you will recognize from previous reaction videos, such as Oliver Messiaen, George Crumb, and Steve Reich. You may see some of the other names from this video appear in future requests. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure we will. I'm all about learning something new, especially when it comes to the classical music thing. Pretty much everything is me learning something new. Get over, show Megan the piano teacher all the love in the world, and let's go on a journey.
Classical music. It's beautiful, elegant, refined,
True.
genteel. And sometimes it's whatever that was.
My interest is piqued. What was that?
Well, the bizarre, absurd, experimental, strange, and just plain weird side of classical music is exactly what today's video is all about. Hi, I'm Megan, and I'm a piano teacher with over 15 years of teaching experience and 3 degrees in piano pedagogy. And on my channel, I share...
We need to learn a new word already. Pedagogy? Write that down.
Teacher with over 15 years of teaching experience and 3 degrees in piano pedagogy. And on my channel, I share tips, tricks, and tutorials every single week. I asked on Reddit and on my community tab here on YouTube for some of the wackiest and weirdest pieces of piano music that you know of. And y'all definitely delivered.
Yeah. Reddit is definitely the place to go if you want a whole bunch of sleuths to go out and dig up something weird. For sure.
A playlist with all of the pieces I'll be covering in today's video will be in the description. I'm gonna give a bit of background info on each piece and composer, some of my thoughts, and a rating on a very complex and precise scale from good weird to bad weird.
There is a difference between good weird and bad weird. Bad weird is just bad.
On the following questions. Number 1, is it innovative or novel? Number 2, is it challenging and does it take skill? 3, is it pleasant to listen to? And 4, if it's not necessarily pleasant to listen to, is it at least interesting to listen to? And if I need a bit of a tiebreaker,
I have a feeling we're gonna run into some that aren't.
is it meaningful? Does it represent something extra musical that's really important or compelling? If I'm answering yes for most of those questions, we're going good weird. But if not, it's going in bad weird. Let's get into it.
Oh, here we go, Lord. How do you listen? Normal music notes are hard. Like, I understand the concept of music notes, but I can't read sheet music. I get that certain things up or down, or yeah, I get it. But your music appreciation taught you the very, very basics. This is a note. This is a this. This is a that. But all of that has escaped my mind completely for the most part. So look at it. This is a foreign language. This might as well be hieroglyphics.
Brian John Peter Ferneyhough is an English composer typically considered to be the central figure of the New Complexity movement.
The New Complexity movement. There must be another word for weird.
Is it novel? Well, for this question, I'm gonna have to base it on how it sounds to me and my knowledge. So for me, this doesn't sound especially novel. I'm sure that the New Complexity movement is different structurally to like 12-tone serialism.
I love how respectful she's still being.
But to me, it sounds very similar to like Schoenberg or other atonal piano music. Now, is it challenging? Definitely. It looks like it's super challenging to play and even more difficult to read it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks more difficult to read it
Accurately. Now, is it pleasant to listen to? I hate to say it, but no. It does remind me a little bit of what it sounds like when my cats walk across the piano. Big kitty.
This is exactly what it sounds like.
Show the people what I'm talking about. See, even she does not like this kind of music. Is it interesting to listen to? Well, kind of. I think it's interesting
I mean, it's kind of intriguing. But I guess, like, Anybody that got up there and did anything on the piano, like at first I'm gonna be intrigued. I guess it depends on how long it went on for.
Listen to while looking at the score, but listening alone, I think it's interesting for a pretty short time, and then it all does kind of start to sound the same. I do think that I'm gonna need the tiebreaker here, so is it meaningful? I did some research and found some of the composer's comments on the piece, but they were really just about the compositional process and not any extra musical inspiration.
It's all about the creative process. Swear to God.
Or influence. So sadly, I think I'm gonna have to put this on the side of bad weird, but it is more borderline for me.
Okay. All right, that's intriguing. I'm not even gonna lie. Somebody playing, it's almost like they're playing the piano, violin, and adding this. This is intriguing. Already, but maybe just seeing it. I don't know. Maybe just hearing it too. I can dig it.
Stephen Scott was an American composer best known for his development of the bowed piano, which is an extended technique involving 10 musicians playing a grand piano using rosined horsehair, nylon filament, and other utensils to bow the piano strings. So this sounds incredibly novel and unique to me.
Oh, totally. 100%. Who came up with, hey, you know what? I bet you all 10 of us can play that one piano.
I read that he wasn't the inventor of the technique of bowing the piano, but was one of the main developers. And I really don't think I've ever heard anything quite like this before. While for the individual players, I don't know if any part of this is super difficult.
But putting it all together,
there's a lot of effort put into composing the piece, coordinating the ensemble, teaching each person all of these extended techniques, and performing it all together. So yes, I would say that it is challenging. It is 100% pleasant to listen to for me. Even if I didn't know what was going on here or
it
what
would
was
still be
making
nice
these
to
really
listen
unique
to.
sounds, I still think that I would enjoy it.
Yeah, even when I closed my eyes, I was still enjoying the vibe.
And for that reason, I'd also say that it's definitely interesting.
This is
to
good
listen
weird.
to. It's even
got a
more
good weird.
interesting to watch the ensemble of performers play. So I would say that this is not just good weird, it's great weird.
Hell yeah.
Frederick Anthony Shevsky was an American composer and pianist, considered to be one of the most important American composer-pianists of his time. To my ear, this absolutely sounds novel. There's a certain aspect of minimalism to it, but it also sounds a little bit like the Prokofiev toccata with a splash of Rite of Spring. It's crunchy and gritty, and the development of the whole piece is really interesting. It combines a really wide variety of styles and idioms throughout. This is also absolutely incredibly difficult to play. There's a variety of really difficult techniques, and making everything accurate is a big challenge.
I like hearing her opinions on these things. I like hearing her speak from a spot of wisdom, because to us it might sound completely different, but once she explains it, it kind of makes sense.
Every section is virtuosic in a different way, but I think even more than all of that is that in so many of these sections, you're going for such specific sounds. Even when it's just two notes alternating, you have to have complete control over every aspect of the sound. Dynamics, timbre, voicing, etc. Now, is it pleasant to listen to? I would say yes. It's not pretty, but it's an extremely compelling and evocative listening experience. I was
Kind of like a car crash that you can't look away from. That's kind of like my ears wanted to see more.
on the edge of my seat for a majority of this piece, and so for that reason, I would also definitely say that it's interesting to listen to. And while this one definitely doesn't need the tiebreaker, I do think that the inspiration is very interesting. It's meant to represent the machines in a North Carolina cotton mill and serve as commentary on the poor working conditions in those factories. So final verdict, excellent weird. I would happily listen to this many more times.
Oh, count me in. This is already awesome sounding. That's intriguing. That's already. I'm gonna call it. She's gonna say it's a good weird.
Eggert is a German composer and pianist. Is this innovative or novel? To me, yes. If I couldn't read the score, I would have a really hard time figuring out exactly what the percussive part was. And I definitely wouldn't guess that it was just one person playing. As the name suggests, it absolutely sounds like a one-person ensemble. And for that reason, it's also definitely very challenging. Just
no kidding. I had no idea that this sounded definitely like it was more than one person.
Coordinating all of those individual lines and the interplay of all the rhythms. Moving from hitting the piano to playing the keys. There's parts that you have to play with your chin, parts where the pianist just has to kind of yell. And
how do you write that on a sheet music? This is where your chin comes in.
While there's some places where the actual notes on the piano maybe don't look terribly challenging, you have to remember that you're almost always playing it with just one hand. And I also find it quite pleasant to listen to.
It was definitely
pleasant to listen. I
pleasant
really appreciate the way that the piece builds, and I would also say that it's very interesting to listen to. And it's even more interesting to see the score and read the instructions for how the pianist is supposed to make all of these different sounds. So this is solidly good weird.
Sounds like the house is gonna fall apart.
Simon Steen Andersen is a Danish composer, performer, director, and media artist. Okay, I'm gonna be totally honest, we are kind of starting off in the negative here because that guy's giant bare foot at the beginning was kind of a jump scare. Is it innovative or not? I would say yes, at least to me. I don't think I've heard anything else quite like it.
No.
It certainly uses a interesting blend of techniques. It also does look rather complicated and like there's sort of a lot to follow. They kind of look like a surgical team operating on the piano. Now, is it pleasant to listen to? I'm gonna have to say no.
I'm gonna have to agree with you.
And on the interesting front, I think I'm also gonna have to say no. It is at best kind of interesting to watch, but with audio only, I don't really think I would get much out of this at all. And
listen. We have been dead on the entire time.
I think it's an interesting question.
Same
because
minds.
for a lot of these pieces, you get more out of it if you're watching it be performed or are able to look at the score. And for some of these that kind of venture into the space of performance art, you're never supposed to just listen to it. It's always supposed to be a multi-sensory experience. But there are audio-only recordings of this one, so I think it's fair to evaluate it that way. I wasn't able to find any information on any extra musical meaning or inspiration, so I think we're gonna have to go bad weird for this one.
Bad weird. Did people just get bored actually playing the piano? I'm really genuinely curious. Like how you say, I'm so tired of pressing the same old keys. Somebody get on there and pluck a string. I'm gonna have to sit over here and run my fingernails along. Like, how does this come about? Just somebody say, oh, you know what? I'm a piano player. I could do this too. And then they did their own weird thing with it. I'm totally curious.
Helmut Friedrich Lachenmann is a German composer of contemporary classical music and a pianist and academic teacher. So to me, this sounds very unique. I don't think I've ever heard or seen another piece that just uses the edges of the keys and these unpitched glissandi to create the bulk of the piece. I also think that it seems challenging. I think when you first look at it, it might be like, well, I can go like...
Yeah, but without hidden keys...
Too, seems pretty easy. But there really is a lot more to it, especially when you look at the score. Pleasant to listen to seems maybe like a bit of a stretch, but it is definitely interesting. I also looked up the inspiration for this piece, and the goal is to make the piano sound like a güiro, which is a Puerto Rican percussion instrument. And I think that's a really interesting inspiration, and it definitely adds something to my listening experience of the piece. So, good weird.
Action up, action diagonal, action outwards. Action up, action diagonal, action outwards. Action across, action up.
Matthew Schlomovitz
I'm kind of torn on this one.
is a composer of contemporary classical music. So is it innovative or novel? Definitely. The incorporation of the speech and the movement really isn't something that you see every day. And I think that it does seem challenging. The piano part really isn't tricky until the very end, but I do think that learning and coordinating all of the speech and movements would be challenging. I don't think that I would say that it's pleasant, and at first I wasn't even sure if I would call it interesting. But after listening to it a couple of times, I did find a couple of things interesting. First of all, the music and the movement and the speech are all connected. There's a logic to it, hence the title. And I think it's supposed to be kind of funny, which I appreciate. The involvement of
We do appreciate
in
humor.
serious classical music is really interesting and unique. And this clearly meets the criteria for a piece that you're supposed to watch as well as listen to. It's never really meant to be audio only. I couldn't find any particular inspiration other than the way that the title relates to the music. So this is kind of borderline for me. I think I'm gonna go with good weird, but just
I'm glad that she was torn between it too.
barely.
That it wasn't just me, because I don't understand what's going on. How was she making that so
Johannes
fast?
Adler is a German composer, performer, and conceptual and media artist. I guess with the use of the audio and video playback, it's kind of novel, although the sound of the music
So because there's what it was, audio playback, and we're playing along with it.
maybe wasn't that unique to me. I think it's definitely difficult. The piano part that's performed live is certainly challenging. And it looks like some of the recorded parts are meant to be recorded by the performing pianist.
Is it pleasant to
beforehand.
listen to?
And then just the overall timing of it has to be tricky.
I don't think
now, I'm
so.
gonna have to say no to it being pleasant to listen to. And there were moments that sounded interesting, but honestly, overall, I didn't find it overly interesting to listen to. It was just too cacophonous at most points to really make a lot of sense of what was going on. And I couldn't find any particular extra musical inspiration for this one, so I think it's gonna have to go in bad weird. George Henry Crumb Jr. was an American composer of avant-garde classical music. It's definitely novel between the various extended techniques, the amplified piano, and the overall harmonic language is very interesting and incorporates a lot of different inspirations, including traditional Indian music. And it's also absolutely challenging. Between things that are sort of traditionally technically demanding, there's again a lot of extended techniques to employ, and like some of the other pieces, just having to be insanely careful with every single part of the sound in lots of places in this piece. For
It
me,
was pleasant to
I
listen
do
to.
find this quite pleasant to listen to. And you might be going like, what? You didn't like a bunch of these other pieces? But I'm gonna be honest, I'm a pretty big George Crumb fan. We need a name for ourselves, maybe like the Crumpets or something. So I have kind of a soft spot, and I do actually really like this. And it's absolutely super interesting to
I say
listen to,
good weird
and
too.
even more interesting when you add the score. There's parts that are written in circles, and you can also just see a little bit more of the instructions on those extended techniques, which is really interesting. I also do think that the inspiration is very interesting, and the symbolism in a lot of the pieces is very cool. So easy, it's very, very good weird. Lamont Thornton
What, was that the whole thing?
Young is an American composer.
It did not look like he was moving forward to do anything else.
Composer, musician, and performance artist, recognized as one of the first American minimalist composers, and
It
a
was
central figure in
minimalist.
post-war avant-garde music. Oh, brother. I mean, yes, I guess it's kind of novel. And I do think that it's important to consider that Lamont Young was building on John Cage's work in Indeterminacy in Music. So at the time, this was really pushing boundaries and asking a lot of interesting questions about music. Today, if a student tried to write this for a composition assignment, the question they'd be asking is, do I want to fail? Now, is it challenging? Let's be honest, no. Is it pleasant to listen to? Let's be honest, no. And is it at least interesting? For me, individually, I wouldn't say that this particular piece is overly interesting to listen to. But reading about the full set of pieces is kind of interesting. They're playing around with all kinds of indeterminacy, and there's everything from building a fire, turning all the lights off, releasing a butterfly from the room. And in terms of meaning, I do think that part of the point of these pieces is for you to question what you think the meaning of the piece is. So like for this one, to be held for a long time. It does ask an interesting question about what do we consider to be a long time. Okay, but I gotta stop talking before I change my mind. This is bad weird.
Thank you.
Okay, but just for fun, here's another one from the same set. The instructions for this piece are, push the piano up to a wall and put the flat side up against it. Then continue pushing into the wall. Push as hard as you can. If the piano goes through the wall, keep pushing in the same direction regardless of new obstacles. And continue to push as hard as you can, whether the piano is stopped against an obstacle or moving. The piece is over when you are too exhausted.
This is a real thing?
To
Somebody really wrote these instructions? Now I feel like we are taking it to the other side. Literally, like push the piano through the wall. What the? Acid? Mushrooms? Something.
Any longer.
Something. It's got to
So
be
is this one
influenced by
innovative?
something.
I mean, I guess so. And is it challenging? Well, it definitely
Yeah, have you ever tried to push the piano through the damn wall?
takes some strength and stamina, if not skill. Is it pleasant
No.
to listen to? There's not a whole lot to listen to, so no. And is it interesting to listen to?
No.
Not really. Now,
But it is
meaningful?
hilarious.
This is how I know I've been filming this video for a bit too long. But am I crazy, or is it kind of profound? The piece is over when you're too exhausted to push any longer? Oh,
I mean, I guess it would be fun to watch once. To watch somebody struggle around trying to push the piano through obstacles on the other side of the wall.
my gosh, that raises some big questions and big thoughts about life in general.
Yeah,
I
no
promise
kidding.
I've only had tea to drink this morning. I'm gonna have to go dead in the middle for this one. Maybe I am totally crazy. Ask me about it tomorrow and I might have a completely different opinion. Maybe I'll have come to my senses. Liszt was a composer, virtuoso pianist, conductor, and teacher of the Romantic period, with a diverse body of work spanning more than 6 decades. He is considered to be one of the most prolific and influential composers of his era. And while during much of his life, Liszt was kind of like the Mick Jagger of his time, in later life he became somewhat of a religious recluse and wrote much darker and more experimental pieces like this one. So to our modern ear, this might not really sound like anything crazy, but for the time it was extremely novel. These later pieces truly broke the mold and the progression of nearly a century of Western classical music. While this is definitely among Liszt's easier piano pieces, it is still a challenging piece to play well and to interpret. And to me, it's absolutely pleasant to listen to. It's haunting and strange, but still very beautiful. And I absolutely also think that it's very interesting and compelling. I also think that it's quite meaningful. The later part of Liszt's life was also marked by a lot of personal tragedy, and the title of this piece translates to Gray Clouds. And it's meant to depict those clouds spreading across the sky, which is possibly allegorical of Liszt's mental state at the time. Good weird for sure.
Good weird, I agree.
Olivier Eugene Prosper Charles Messiaen, mouthful, was a French composer, organist, and ornithologist. One of the major composers of the 20th century, he was also an outstanding teacher of composition and musical analysis. There's a uniqueness to this even to a modern ear. There's parts of it that almost sound like Impressionism, but just taken to a whole new level. And certainly for 1943, there's some novelty here. It's absolutely challenging and takes skill for both pianists. Now, is it pleasant to listen to? This might be the hardest piece to answer for that so far. It's rarely beautiful, but it's incredibly interesting and moving for sure.
It's
But
gonna
this
end up
might
on the
be
good
most
weird.
meaningful piece on the list so far. This was written for a series of concerts that were held as an act of artistic resistance to the German occupation of Paris in 1943. And according to Messiaen's author's note attached to the original score, the work takes its inspiration from a quote by Ernest Hello. Amen, word of Genesis, which leads to Revelation. Amen, word of Revelation, which is the consummation of Genesis. Messiaen gives 4 basic interpretations of Amen. It is done, so be it according to thy will, in the hope, the desire that I may freely give and freely receive, and it is so, world without end. He describes the music as 7 musical visions, which reflect the living beings who say Amen in gratitude for their existence. Okay, wow. This is definitely landing in good weird. Ivan Alexandrovich
kinda like it.
Vishnegradsky was a Russian composer primarily known for his microtonal compositions. This is certainly novel. The use of quarter tones or ultrachromaticism is novel even today, and certainly at the time. And absolutely like the Messiaen, this is difficult for both players. Pleasant to listen to might be a bit of a stretch just because the microtonality is so jarring to the ear, but interesting is an easy yes for this one. I couldn't find any particular extra musical inspiration for this one, but it is definitely going in good weird.
Yeah, you gotta put it over.
Henry Dixon Cowell was an American composer, pianist, writer, publisher, and teacher. This piece is massively innovative. In fact, it was the first piano piece ever written to be performed entirely free of the keyboard, using only manual manipulation of the strings within the instrument. And it's absolutely challenging as well. There are some very unique extended techniques in this piece. And it's difficult to read the unconventional notation. I've played Henry Cowell's 3 Irish Legends, and while I really enjoyed playing them, they were definitely more challenging than I thought they were gonna be, especially on the reading piece. And honestly, I do think that it's pleasant to listen to.
I do too.
It might not be beautiful, but it really does paint a picture and set such a compelling mood. And I would also say that it's definitely very interesting to listen to and even more interesting to watch someone perform. There's also some interesting extra musical inspiration for this one. The Banshee is a figure in Celtic mythology, and I think the piece represents this super well, so I am going with good weird for this one.
I think it was good weird too. I think that's a great choice. Anytime that, I was thinking about the first piano that someone ever played like that. It must be very strange for the piano. No one's ever touched me like that before, because this is not people that step outside the box, that take an instrument, and you're so good with that instrument that you decide to do something completely new and try something completely new. To me, that's so wild. I like it. It's doing something wonderful to my brain. Are those freaking screws? It seems like we would destroy a piano, right? To drill a bunch of screws into there? And nails?
John Milton Cage Jr. was an American composer and music theorist, a pioneer of indeterminacy in music, electroacoustic music, and non-standard use of musical instruments. Cage was one of the leading figures of the post-war avant-garde. This piece is certainly novel. John Cage was the inventor and a huge pioneer of the prepared piano, which is a whole different universe to extended techniques and different manipulations of the instrument. And this piece both takes skill to play and to properly prepare the piano so that hopefully you don't completely destroy it. To me,
There's a way to prepare it with screws without completely destroying it? Color me intrigued.
It's very pleasant to listen to. It's really hypnotizing and almost sounds like an Indonesian gamelan, which also means that it's very interesting to listen to as well. And it truly is interesting just to listen to it, but it's even more interesting when you can actually see a performance and look at the inside of the prepared piano. There's also some really interesting meaning here. John Cage became very interested in Indian philosophy, and the aim of this set of pieces was to express the 8 permanent emotions of the Indian Rasa tradition. So I'm also going with good weird for this one. I'm actually starting to get a little bit concerned about what it says about me that I like so many of these.
Don't worry, I'm right there with you. Maybe we're both weirdos. That's hypnotic. I don't care what anybody says, it really...
Stephen Michael Reich is an American composer, best known as a pioneer of minimalism in music in the late 1960s. This piece is definitely very novel and innovative. Steve Reich was the inventor and the pioneer of phase music, or phasing, where musical patterns slowly drift in and out of sync with each other. While the patterns themselves maybe aren't terribly challenging, the phasing part of it is definitely very difficult. A lot of phase music is done with tapes or something like that, so for 2 live performers to do it and maintain their individual tempos is really quite difficult, and I've even heard of people trying to play this piece by themselves, which is just wild. I do find it both pleasant and interesting to listen to. The minimalism aspect of it means that you kind of get into a zone where all of those little changes start to become super meaningful. So good weird for this one. And Steve Reich is actually one of my favorite examples of why I think it's so important to share a little bit about the background, compositional process, and inspiration behind these pieces. To give a small nerd rant, maybe a medium nerd rant, there's this concept in classical music of absolute music versus program music. Absolute music doesn't have any extra musical meaning or direct inspiration, and is meant to be really enjoyed for its structure and construction alone. Let's take, for example, the Mozart Sonata in A major, K331, the first movement. What you're meant to get from this is an enjoyment of the melody and the harmony, and the development of the theme and variations. You don't really need to know anything about this piece to enjoy it and understand it. Of course, knowing about the composer's life and their inspirations and music theory and things will always enhance your listening experience. But it's not necessary, and most importantly, it's not the composer's intentions for you to be thinking about any extra musical subject matter. In contrast, program music is meant to tell a story, represent a scene, or illustrate a literary or pictorial idea, often specified in a descriptive title. The classic example of this is Hector Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique, which was designed to tell this loosely autobiographical story of a composer who poisons himself with opium due to the unrequited love of a beautiful and fascinating young woman. His hallucinations then take him to a ball, to a pastoral scene in a field, which is then interrupted by a march to the scaffold, a beheading, and then a grotesque satanic dance. It is really important that you know this program, this story that Berlioz had in mind. The piece makes way more sense, is more enjoyable, and most importantly, it's the composer's intentions for you to have this inspiration in mind when you listen. And for me personally, the best example that I've experienced of this was with Steve Reich's Different Trains. I'd heard snippets of it and wasn't really into it. It kind of sounded weird for no reason to me. But then my husband and I listened to an episode of the Song Exploder podcast about it. It went into the background, the history, the inspiration, the structure, the compositional process. And the 20-minute episode ended with a full performance of the piece, and it moved me to tears. It was one of the most profoundly meaningful listening experiences I have ever had. So, nerd rant coming to a close. That's why I think it's so important to consider the background and inspirations of these pieces. It's kind of unfair to listen to it and write it off without knowing the composer's intentions for our full experience of the piece. And if we do all of that and we still don't like it, we can just confidently hate it even more.
It's beautiful to listen to.
Johann Joseph Reich was a Czech-born composer, music theorist, and contemporary and friend of Beethoven. For the time, this piece was absolutely innovative. The idea of experimental music, or really pushing the limits of compositional conventions, was not super popular in the late classical and early romantic eras. And for that reason, much of Reich's music has kind of fallen into obscurity. This is also actually quite a challenging piece. While only using one chord, it experiments with a lot of different ways to manipulate that one chord, and plays around with a lot of different techniques. I would also say that it's quite pleasant to listen to. It's very consonant. Now, I might actually have to go with no for is it interesting to listen to. It's certainly interesting to consider what the piece is doing and the structure, but compared to some of the other pieces on this list, it might not really be as unique sounding or compelling. So
True.
it's kind of borderline on the interesting spectrum, but I am still giving it good.
I gotta give her credit because listening to all of these things and then literally taking the time to form an entire educated opinion about it. Like, a lot of people would just listen to some of these things and be like, nope, nope, we're moving on. He's pushing the piano through the wall. We're done with that. Next. Like, but she literally gave each one of them a chance. She been through and said, you know what, okay, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna give my true thoughts. And she's still been very polite on the respectful side, even if it's not something that she likes. She seems like she's the kind of person like me, where I may not like something, but I'm not gonna go out and just dog it for no reason. For somebody, that's somebody's favorite song. For somebody, that piece means everything. For the artist, that piece meant everything. Who the hell am I to just destroy it? I may not like it for certain reasons, but that doesn't mean that I can't find something good about it. That doesn't mean that I won't go do the research. I don't know. I think you just got to give things a chance.
Weird. György Sándor Ligeti was a Hungarian composer of contemporary classical music. He has been described as one of the most important avant-garde classical composers of the later half of the 20th century. Now, while the harmonic language used here might be kind of similar to some other pieces on the list, the concept is certainly very unique and novel. Each movement of this piece adds an additional note. So the first movement is based on just one note. The second, 2 notes, the third, 3 notes, etc. I don't think Ligeti wrote anything easy for pianists, so it is definitely challenging. Now, pleasant, I think I'd have to say no, but it's kind of borderline. I definitely
I kind of found it a little bit pleasant.
Interesting, but that's how I feel about a lot of Ligeti's music. I think it's interesting, but I don't necessarily love the harmonic language. It's very dense and complicated, so I'm not sure if I like it, but I appreciate it. Still, I'll put it in good weird. Morton Feldman was an American composer. A major figure in 20th century classical music, Feldman was an important exponent of indeterminacy in music.
This one's going to be a red all the way across the board, I think. I don't know. Some of them make you wonder, like, what made people take certain things so seriously? Like, how did certain things, like, if I got up right now and I just beat on the guitar, there wouldn't be anything novel about it. There wouldn't be anything exciting about it. But if I was the first person to do that, is it just because, like, they're experimenting, no one's heard anything like it before, that people are like, yo, that dude was a great
To my ear, I don't know if it sounds overly unique. I don't know enough about the compositional style, and there is totally a chance that I'm missing something huge here and this is totally genius. But to my ear, it doesn't sound overly novel. And I guess you have to be able to count a lot of rests. And some of the chords are a little strange and maybe hard to reach and shift quickly. So sure, it takes skill. Now I'm gonna have to go with no for it being pleasant, and I really don't find it terribly interesting either. So this is gonna have to go in bad weird. Thomas Floyd Johnson was an American composer and music critic associated with minimalism. God, I'm gonna need some Chopin or Mozart or something after this. So I guess technically this is a pretty novel concept, but why?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I guess technically it's meant to be played quite fast, which makes it sort of challenging. But no, this is not pleasant or at all interesting to listen to, and it's not meaningful, so go in bad weird where you belong.
Yeah, bad weird. I kind of find it very beautiful.
Terrence Mitchell Riley is an American composer and performing musician, best known as a pioneer of the minimalist school of composition. So this piece is absolutely novel. It combines some very traditional tonal writing with a very unique tuning system and improvisation as a part of the finished product. It absolutely takes a skillful pianist to play this work, and it's really quite long, just under an hour, so it takes some stamina as well. And I would absolutely just listen to this for enjoyment. It's beautiful in many places. And the unique tuning is really interesting, but often not overly jarring. But there are several movements that are much more avant-garde, so I would also say that that makes it very interesting to listen to. The piece also has a very interesting inspiration. From the program notes, it says, his inspiration for this work came from a legendary harp left behind in the New World in 1579 on the shores of Nova Albion, which is now called San Francisco Bay. A Native American man is said to have found the harp and placed it on a cliff where the westerly winds played upon it and temperature and humidity changes created an ever-shifting set of tonalities.
That's
so,
awesome.
Very good weird for me.
Very good weird.
Michael Harrison is an American contemporary classical music composer and pianist. In 1986, Harrison designed and produced the harmonic piano, an extensively modified grand piano with the ability to play 24 notes per octave. The idea of keyboard music in just or pure intonation is definitely very novel, especially today, and it's really not widely used. The idea is that even tuning, which is how most pianos are tuned, divides the octave into 12 perfectly equal half steps. And you can play in all 12 keys and it will sound basically the same. Just tuning uses pure whole number frequency ratios. So you actually get more in tune for your perfect intervals and things like major thirds. Now the problem is that if you go outside of your home key, things start to sound really funky. So with equal temperament, we sacrifice those really beautiful beatless intervals on our fifths and thirds, for example, for the ability to easily play any interval on the piano and play in any key. Bach famously demonstrated the features of equal temperament in the Well-Tempered Clavier. And since around that time, nearly all keyboard music has been composed and performed in equal temperament, but just intonation still has its proponents. This is beautifully written piano music and certainly takes a skilled performer to play it well. To me, it's also absolutely beautiful, and the just intonation really makes it interesting to listen to. I'm not sure if it would sound very interesting if it was played in equal tuning. So I think that that feature of the the piece really makes it compelling. So we're going good weird for this
Yeah,
one.
we are.
I'm actually not even sure it's that weird. It's just good. Well, I'm gonna go listen to some Mozart for a few hours to try to heal my brain after that. If you see me filling out 12-tone matrices for fun, send help immediately. I'm sure this video didn't even really scratch the surface of all of the strange, unique, and experimental music out there.
I'm sure there's a whole
Please
host
pop your
more.
recommendations for other pieces that I should check out in the comments. And maybe I'll have to make a part 2. Or maybe not. I'll have to see how my ears are feeling in a couple of days. As always,
See if
thank
they
you
stop
so much
bleeding.
for watching and happy practicing.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A fantastic education session on the classical weird music. Get over and show Megan the piano teacher all the love in the world. If you haven't done so already, her link is right there inside of the description. I could listen to her talk about anything. Like, I don't know, she's just so well spoken, well versed. I'm absolutely I'm walking away a learned person. Definitely some things that I don't want to go back and relearn in this one, but there was a lot of beautiful pieces. There's a lot of weird things. Maybe I'm a weirdo. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm a weirdo. That's why I like weird art and weird music. And I don't know. There's something intriguing about it when someone goes off the beaten track. Shout out to Brian for the request. I appreciate it. Always getting me spun up on some classical music knowledge. And it is appreciated on this end. Try to learn something every day. Hit the like button if you liked it. The dislike button, but I won't believe you. Tell the next one of my combustible. You guys be happy, healthy, safe. I love you to the moon and back. Peace.